So good evening, everybody. Welcome to another film talk in the 12th edition of ALFILM, Arab Film Festival in Berlin, presented to you this year as a home edition via the platform of Indie Kino Berlin and via Facebook. My name is Iskandar Abdallah. I am a programmer at ALFILM. And in ALFILM, we are actually keen from the beginning to present primarily recent film creations from the Arab region, or also done by filmmakers from Arab origin who live outside the region. But also we are keen to showcase films that tackle issues related to the region, or those that touch upon also the varieties of Arab identities in the diaspora. And from this last category, we are showing this year, among others, the brilliant feature-length documentary FORTSCHRITT im Tal der Ahnunglosen, or Progress in the Valley of the People Who Do Not Know, by Florian Kunert from Germany. And also the poetic short documentary with the interesting title, The Sun and the Looking Glass, for One Easily Forgets, But the Tree Remember, by Milena Desse from Brussels. This evening, I'm very glad to have Florian and Milena as guests. Thank you both for being with us tonight, even if only virtually. And let me shortly introduce you before we start our conversation. Florian Kunert is a film director and media artist based in Berlin. He studied documentary filmmaking in Cuba before completing a postgraduate degree at the Academy of Media Arts in Köln. And FORTSCHRITT im Tal der Ahnunglosen is his first feature documentary, and it was premiered at the Berlinale. Milena Desse is a French artist based in Brussels. She studied photography, visual, and space arts in Sweden and in Belgium. And she works with various formats and mediums, doing like media installations, performances, but also she writes and make films. For those who are watching us now, they can engage in the conversation just by leaving a comment below the live stream video, and I will try to get through all the questions. So Florian and Milena, welcome again. And my first question is actually addressed to both of you. And it's about how did you become interested in those places where your both films play? So let me start with you, Milena. How did you become interested in this small Palestinian village in the West Bank and this house you shoot at?
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having us. It's a real pleasure. So yes, so the film I made was shot in Palestine, in the West Bank, and I've encountered this place and Palestine 2 years ago through artistic encounters. I was working back then in the gallery of the school I was studying, and there was this collaboration with a curator and an artist that came to make an exhibition and a seminar, and so I worked with them on this exhibition, and Jawad Al-Mali and Tina Shahwell, and through this meeting we kept in touch, and then I went to Palestine in order to assist Jawad and also Sliman Mansour, two artists who are working in Ramallah and Jerusalem. And so that was a moment where I went to this place for the first time, stayed for a bit, and started to meet different people and different artistic and cultural institutions there. And so that's how I met the people behind Sakia. So Sakia is an amazing project based in Ain Kenya, which is a bit like 7 kilometers away from Ramallah. and they are renovating 2 houses on top of a hill above the village, and they are turning this place into a research space at the cross point of science, agriculture, and arts. And during the renovation of these houses, they found a lot of objects, and I started to look at these objects and to spend, yes, to really want to spend time looking at them. And so that was the first encounter, and then I came back 6 months later to do an artistic residency there specifically. And that's when the project really happened and the film was made.
Interesting. It's a very small village, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. And Florian, what brought you to the Tal der Ahnungslosen or the Progress Factory? There, was it a personal connection, or maybe the encounter with the Syrian refugees came first?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm also really happy for this invitation and to talk with you and Milena. Yes, the first encounter, I mean, that's how the film actually started, with this place where the film is shot, in this former Progress Factory, which is now a ruin. And parts of this area where there was this factory in the GDR has been used as a home for asylum seekers. And for me, it was in 2015, the beginning of, when this huge xenophobia started in especially the east of Germany, and especially the area where I come from. So I wanted to because a lot of people talked about it, like everybody was involved. And that's when I returned to my home village, which is Neustadt, which is a little town 30 kilometers from the Czech border, and started to talk to people. And then I visited the Progress Factory and talked to asylum seekers there, how they experience the situation. And that's when I first met the guys you met in the film. That we ended up making the film with. Also a lot of other people, but then when it became clear that it's this connection to Syria, then I only focused to work with Syrian refugees.
Interesting. What actually drove us to bring those 2 films together in one conversation, despite the fact that each has its own distinctive style and also its own context, is that both films deal with lost homes, with different configurations of how to say, like statelessness. We have a state that simply ceased to exist, the DDR in Florian's film, and a state that struggles to exist in Palestine in case of Milena's films. So both films also dwell on this idea of memory and the relationship between memory and spaces. So maybe, at least I see in Milena's film an attempt to resist erasure by insisting on remembering, and how, and to follow the traces of memory maybe stored on the walls or in the rocks and the layers of the trees. And in the other case, we see this factory, but also we see how different registers of memory maybe overlap when the newcomers appear in the scene and perform their own stories there. So somehow they override the history of the factory by imposing also their stories on the space. And that's why I think it was super interesting to bring both of you in conversation. But let me go to you, Florian, again, and I want to ask you maybe about 2 things. First, about something I sensed in watching your film in the course of how your protagonists, particularly the ex-employees of the factory, how they were urged to remember and retell their stories. I don't know, I felt a sense of discomfort or a struggle between between telling what one really feels about the past on one hand and what one is supposed to tell. And this maybe was clear to me in the scene where the picture of Erich Honecker was hanging, and then you asked this couple, like, what do you want to tell him? And so do you think that remembering the GDR is somehow tabooed? And I don't mean with a taboo in the sense of it's not allowed to tell, but that there's a kind of pressure that one should only tell certain things in certain ways?
Yeah, there's a lot of urging in the film, definitely, especially towards the former factory workers in the GDR. And yes, I mean, the first thing is that I don't think people would confirm this, that they're scared to talk about the history or like. But what I encountered is that the story what is interesting actually is that the story that's been carried on and that everybody in the village agreed on is kind of quite similar always, and it's kind of not the story I was looking for.
Yeah.
Because that's when you started to talk with people about the xenophobia problem, they started to then eventually talk anyway about the GDR and their past eventually. So that's when I actually got to, my interest shifted to okay, how was it then? And then it was always quite yeah, like floskeln, I don't know how you say in English, like the things they repeated so many times in telling stories on parties or to family members, that I was like, okay, how to get beyond this? And then I was kind of course asking more uncomfortable questions, because I also had a personal interest to really know, like, let's describe in detail, what did you do when you were there? So you went from there. So how, okay, what? And you know, like, because I was born there and nobody told me anything. Half my family worked in this factory and I didn't know anything about this factory. And so then me understanding slowly that, all right, my social conditioning might be coming from a agriculture engineering background was really mind-blowing to me. And that's why there was this kind of personal urge as well that you probably felt in the film as well. But at the beginning, yeah, like, they're very reluctant to talk about it, and they switch into this nostalgic image they have of this past. And there's a lot of nostalgia, and the film also allows this nostalgia, but never, it always cuts it. You probably noticed in the edit that it always doesn't allow this nostalgic. And this is what is so difficult to negotiate, you know, that at the one hand side, there is this blissful memories and happy memories that they probably keep on in the foreground and that they carry most visibly, but then there is also, they always feel that it's compromised by, you know, the narrative of, you know, history that has been written. GDR was a dictatorship, and you surely couldn't have been happy when you lived there and stuff. And then it is that the film tries to put both next to each other. Yes, it was this, and it was this at the same time. So then we actually started to establish this spaces where, like, exploration of memory was even more provoking than asking provoking questions, but actually like having props and reenact, and then together with the Syrian protagonist, even, you know, being kind of role players.
Yeah, like as an alternative approach to let them tell and speak up. But at least I felt, I mean, maybe I felt like really your urge, like, to trying to pick up things, and this was visible, and I think it was interesting for the narrative, this kind of struggle. And the second question I wanted to ask you is about how, of course, in your opinion, and of course through your experience in making this film, the Syrian perspective of losing home, of being a refugee, but also of living many years under a dictatorship, might enrich or might inspire East Germans to see their history from a different perspective. I think that is also what your film was about, among other things.
To be honest, I like this idea a lot, and I would have loved to incorporate that idea more into the film. But unfortunately, in the edit, I then had to see that there is not really a place in this film for the backstory of the Syrian protagonists and their life, and I mean, not even to talk about their story from fleeing down, which is also not part of the film. But yes, this whole rich background story, what was this country actually that they fled from? And I mean, it's only kind of anecdotal and like kind of with the archive material. But yes, this would be a super interesting dialogue. But unfortunately, always when we tried to put something of that in, everybody was just interested in this and nobody was interested in GDR people, because this is, you can't, at the moment, you know, this is like so much more, like you can't really compare. But, and this is kind of the thing we found, there is a hypothetical comparison that is actually interesting if you look in the migration that both of these people underwent. Like the GDR kind of having this, now people talk about an internal migration from one country to the other, and with not actually having moved, but it was a migration, you know, and then seeing, okay, what have people who also have this migration and also have lost their homeland actually maybe in common and to share. And this is the dialogue that I would really like to see, which doesn't happen. Obviously, it's a utopia in the film, you know, and this is kind of, that's why there's always this ironic undertone. But at the end, this is what totally what these people have something to say to each other in this regard.
Yeah, I also liked very much. I mean, this worker who used to be in Syria and who speaks a little bit Arabic. So this was this opportunity for him, like to speak Arabic again, and I felt like that somehow the presence of these groups of young people with this experience might trigger him to think about himself, but also his own political presence as a person who lived in the GDR. Milena, your film has like peculiar poetic aesthetics. You experiment beautifully with the narration through this lens and the reflections of light. What did you want to tell us with this lens? What can what you call the looking glass see or tell us about Palestine or Ain Qiniya that maybe we cannot see with the naked eyes?
Yeah, so there's I think two stories that meet at some point with this lens. I think first there is the profound desire to look closer, like like really closer, and to at least like that this this encounter with that place, the very important part of it was to realize the scale of it for me as a person, as a European, as having a French nationality and all of that. And it was that was a very major click, I think, and that's a click that in a way I was hoping to trigger by visual means and by material means. And the looking glass was this object that allowed the detail to become a landscape, and that allowed the small story to expand and to become a theater for stories to be told in a way. And there's another side of this object that was very important for me, is the fact that in a way it reminds us of like what is the tool we're using to represent, and how the design of this tool and how the invention of that tool actually has an impact on the way we see things and on the way we represent them and the way we take them for real or not. And so there was this, I guess, double movement of at the same time wanting to be very close and spend time and looking at details and to dive into these objects and the stories that they tell, and also to kind of use it as metaphor in a way of, or like putting in front what usually is hidden, what usually is behind. And on the political level, that was very, very important. I guess the mix also of the different formats that are used are also part of the same dynamic of making obvious that image are man-made, image are artifacts, and we need to appropriate them. We need to encounter the specificities and the different qualities that they offer, and use that as a way to dive into a place or an image or a story.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I also wanted to ask you another thing. Allow me to be like a bit provocative and ask you whether this digging up in the past and trying to reconstruct like authentic origin, like long before things went wrong, can be misleading. Some might see that such like nostalgic sentiments might be overly romantic, like in a sense of simplifying history somehow by imagining like a pure origin, and might say that this might hinder people like to move forward. So how would you respond to such an allegation or such a view?
Well, the idea is, I think poetry doesn't make things simplified. It transforms it. And the point is not to write history, to rewrite history. The point is to say there's different lenses through which we can look, and there's different ways, there's different voices that that we can hear. And I think that's more about the multiplication and the diversification of the stories, rather than, you know, putting something as a truth. And I think everything is in the film is designed to ask that question of the veracity of and to not to answer it, to ask it. So I guess your question is very, very important, because that's the whole point. You know, that's the whole purpose of the film in a way.
Yeah, and I also liked your answer, to be honest. And I felt, I don't know, maybe you correct me, but I felt like by highlighting this perspective of, let's say, trees, I felt like you are trying to show how nature might be indifferent to humans' history, or like, you know, it's a different way of perceiving time, a different perception of time, like how we humans perceive it.
Yes, for sure. And that's very interesting also about this specific tree. And so the kaikab there was like it's about 200 years old. The tree that I'm filming was everything, and the lifespan of that tree is roughly 400 years. So in a way, it has been the witness of more than any human can actually witness, and it will survive us. If everything goes well for the tree, it will survive us. So yes, indeed, I think there is a matter of scale, and putting our own scale also in a bigger one, and to realize that in a way we are there, but some species survive longer than us, and of course they don't have the same impact on their environment, and they don't act upon the environment in the same way. But there was something very significant about this tree, and about also this like the fruits made by this tree are used in order to how do you call it, to heal memory impairments. Which in a way is you know, it's also a way of looking at history and so, okay, things will survive us, whatever happens to our species and however we deal with it, and they have a different they will, like, in a way, adapt to the environment. They will their roots will break walls, their roots will grow to some places, or they will grow, and that was at the same time the surface of that tree. That is something that anybody can write on, because the trunk is so soft that even with your nail you can draw something on it. But the peeling of it makes it also a bit less permanent, and so it gives for me different perspectives on the way we see time and duration and how we relate to our environment.
Let me go back to Florian. You mentioned, like you referred also now to the xenophobia and anti-migrant polemics in East Germany, and you mentioned also that your film, even if you are touching upon that, but your film is not really about this, but about this kind of let me call it unusual encounter that happens in this place in the East. But what came up a little bit too short for me is how really your Syrian protagonists experienced their encounter. So were there any situations where they felt embarrassed, looked at, or perceived not in a nice way in this small village where they were, or did they take things easy along this journey as it appeared in the film, basically?
Sorry. Yes, I have to say I also actually missed this. Like, I can totally understand your point, and actually this could have been another film to just deconstruct these encounters and observe what happens and how does each party react and stuff. But it would have been such a different way of working, and the material that was created by the format we went for didn't allow much room for this. Unfortunately, there were some deconstructive moments on both sides, which was, for me, my dearest material, really. But it didn't, in this form of the film, we didn't find a way to incorporate it. Like, one was, you know, when they were wearing the uniforms, like, we actually like put it into question. Hey, like, should we wear this uniform? Like, because this is something that should be negotiated, you know. And then the reaction of one of the former factory, let's put them all on, you know. And I was like, but then you also have to put it on. I said, you know, he's like, no, I don't put this on. This is gone for me. This is all, like, you know, part of the past. And I was like, well, then, you know, what are we going to do? And I mean, that is a super interesting moment. And also that, I mean, the thing is, I think it would have also become very apparent that this power balance was just, didn't really allow for this many of those moments, to be honest, because there were the old white guys and women, you know, that narrate, and they have the language, and they tell of their past, you know. And then it was just so hard to even make this encounter, and a lot was made in the edit, but yes, to actually observe the actual nature of this encounter would have been a different film. Also really interesting. I mean, to answer more specifically, there wasn't really, I mean, that's what I also created. There wasn't so many moments where they felt super uncomfortable with. I mean, that was also part of our preparation of the shoot, and that was really delicate. I mean, that would be also a question for them, of course. But I did ask at the end, we let the camera roll and ask, like, you can talk about, bitch about everything and tell us. I mean, we did have a lot of reflection on this. But I think compared to, I mean, at least nothing compared to the racism they face every day where they lived.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, and I didn't, of course, intentionally didn't work with people that go to Pegida marches or to that carry it very openly. And there was also enough understanding from their side of this mentality already to read and where to push and where we can go. And but of course this encounter still would have been super interesting to just follow that.
Yeah. I felt it's there, but just unspoken. The factory was demolished, right? I mean, I watched your film. I watched it several times actually, but I watched it once with a friend, and we had an interesting discussion about the fact that the remnants of this factory somehow allowed this encounter between the ex-workers and the refugees, allowed their histories to be in conversation. But the fact that the factory was eventually demolished may also allude to the difficulty that that this encounter cannot take place again or develop. Would you agree on this reading? That sounds a bit pessimistic. But...
Also, you read this place as this utopic place, this ground zero of like. Well, I don't know. For me, I think the film doesn't specify the image of the factory. For me personally, during the shoot, it was very clear I had to demolish this GDR again. You know, for me, this was, and that's why. Really, like, and I don't even lie, like 70% of the footage was demolition footage. My editor was like, what did you do? Like, can we scroll through this? Do I have to watch all this demolition? I was like, it's going to be the whole film, it's going to be only demolition. And for me, it was a very, you know, therapeutic work as well to kind of watch demolition. I can highly recommend this to anybody. But of course, in the film itself, that would have been another film to make this the whole film, but it was, I guess, interesting for me that you say this, because I haven't actually thought about this yet. For me, it was always like this ghost of the GDR that we kind of inside of this ruin, we kind of recreate scenes of the GDR, and then it's kind of demolished and it's erased like the country that has been erased. And then actually the film switches and actually starts another language, because then we suddenly in the here and now observing their life, their very racist reality. I mean, the film language switches from role play, really scripted scenes, to quite observational documentary then, you know. And then and for me, that ground zero, after it's been demolished, I don't know if that was also so clear that the choir at the end was singing on that kind of clear space. For me, it was more like also because of the, like, let's build up this song they sing. I mean, for me, it was more like, I was thinking in the future, like, hey, can you build something together up? And what would it be? Like, I don't know, like for me, this was more hopeful than for you, I think. But I'm also obsessed, now that we're talking about memory, about houses and the memories they keep. And I find it so amazing. Like when the first thing I ever shot for this film was my aunt that worked in the factory that I took there, and she started to cry entering the building, you know, and I was like, wow, this has such a big meaning for her, this house, and now it's gone. And she carries it inside, you know, and she can revisit it. She carries all this emotion. And for me, this, I don't know, I think this is a whole nother film that has to be made, but at some point. But for me, I'm kind of,
you're happy demolishing.
well, this is the other thing, you know. I was like the narrative of the village was like, thank God this last kind of, how did they say, Schandfleck, I don't know what is in it, this last like, ugly building was demolished finally, you know, because for them it was also erasing of memory, definitely. not having to look at this past that hurts maybe. And
yeah,
maybe
there are other places you can demolish in the next films, like
there will be a film about houses that are demolished.
Milena, I know that your film has been showcased in Lebanon. Did you have the chance to screen it also in Palestine? Did the people in Qaniyah watch it?
So it was not shown in Lebanon, but
really?
It was in Palestine, yes.
In Palestine, okay.
It's even now part of an exhibition in Sakakini in Ramallah. And it was also shown during the Palestine Cinema Days in October. But unfortunately, I couldn't go there or travel. So yeah, I didn't have really, of course they've seen it, but I haven't had the real chance to hear their comments about it. So the film kind of went his own way, and I was just like letting it go and having its little life. But hopefully I will manage at some point to collect the feelings and the thoughts that it can.
I hope so. And Florian, did your protagonists watch your film? How did they react?
Yes, that was the first screening. I mean, first I showed it I invited the Syrian protagonists because we were editing in Cologne and they all by then lived around Cologne. So that was easy to have the screening there, because I would have liked to have everybody together, but then it didn't make sense to fly them back to Neustadt. And then we had another screening in Neustadt, which I was much more scared of.
But it went well.
Yes, it actually went really well. We had very long discussions afterwards. There was not really public kind of this debate, because the cinema, despite I only invited like 20-30 people, was full, of course, in Neustadt. And was a bit nervous, but yeah, that was really important for me to share with the protagonist first. And there was, I mean, I think there was a lot of ongoing reflection as the film also traveled, and then they had the premiere de Berlinale where everybody came together, and yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm really happy to have this conversation with you. Maybe, do you want to add anything? You want to talk about anything I did not tackle that is super essential for you to mention now?
Oh no, your questions were super interesting. Thank you. It was
That's true.
really nice to
Yes.
questions.
I hope, guys, we can screen your films again in cinemas. That's
yes,
and that we meet maybe also with your next project. So thank you very much. And for those who are watching us, you still have the chance to see The Sun and the Looking Glass and Progress. You still have also the chance to watch other great films we have in this edition until Friday, the 30th of April. And I want also to remind you that we still have 2 film talks with wonderful guests ahead. So I think tomorrow also at 7 o'clock, we have a talk with Nadia Boumouche, the director of Amusu. And then on Friday at 7, we have a talk with Mahdi Bersawi, the director of the Tunisian film Hassan. Have a nice evening, everybody, and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.